Welcome to the Adventure Time patch. You already know there's some awesome content in this update, but you also already know none of that even matters because it's balance patch time. Woo! After the content overview. First up, of course, we've got the Adventure Time crossover skins, the elite crossover skins. We got Finn for Jala, Jake for Core, PB for Vrax, and then on top of that we got some Lady Rainicorn with the KO effect, and you know, some little other characters here and there. There's an entire UI takeover, an entire new map, an entire new game mode, and then on top of that, general bug fixes, various animation tweaks, various animation upgrades, among other things. Now, I don't mean to downplay any of that, alright? All of that is really awesome. It must have taken forever to make everything here. But as competitive players, the one thing that matters the most, it's balance patch time. Katar's got a pretty sizable buff, giving Sidelight +1 frame of stun and 0 variable force. Now that doesn't seem like much, +1 frame, 0 force, but this means that Sidelight to Downlight is a true combo at all HP values, regardless of how much damage you've taken, and it no longer requires 6 dex. This is so huge. This is a huge buff. Fun fact, actually, I had Katar Sidelight as one of the 5 most underrated moves in the game in the video that was going to release yesterday. Obviously, the Adventure Time patch changed things, and now that move is even better, so expect to hear a lot about Katar Sidelight in the near future. Neutralite also received that 0 variable force change, which basically means it'll always set up the same distance regardless of how much HP the opponent has. But it's not all good for Neutralite. It got -1 frame of stun, which is a little bit of a minor nerf to the consistency of Neutralite into Downlight or Neutralite into Recovery, and it might make it so that you can fast fall or jump out depending on the height that you get hit by the Neutralite. But either way, Katars are definitely 100% gonna be the flavor of the month. Or, well, okay. Last balance patch, how many months ago was that? Flavor of the summer is, I think, a better description for that. Expect to see a lot of Katars in the competitive scene. Sword got a stun buff to Downlight and increased fixed force to add consistency to it, which also opens up the door for slightly more complex Downlight combos. It also got a force buff to Sarah, which reverts the nerf. That was a little while back, maybe it was the holiday patch, I can't quite remember. Either way, this is great for Sword. Downlight consistency and the weak Sarah were, let me think, I think those two are pretty much the only things holding it back from being one of the best weapons again, so I think this is really great for Sword. It adds a lot of consistency to the kit, which is something that it already kind of had, but this kind of consistency was way more buggy than anything. It's not something inherent with the weapon, so it's good to see this all around. Hopefully the Sword Downlight drops are fixed. Hopefully we can see some more Sword action. Hammer also received a couple buffs. Neutralite got a slightly larger hitbox close to the user, which I don't think is too big of a deal. What is a big deal is that the dare force got shifted around to be much higher at later HPs and a little bit lower at lower HPs. This increases the kill power by a lot, which is especially noticeable in the Russian Mafia combo. Lance, another one of the weapons with a little bit of a buff. All it is that Neutralite is a little bit faster. The first swing has 1 less active hitbox, but the time between the first and second swing was decreased by 3 frames. Not a huge buff, not a big deal. Yay, Lance players. Like the 3 of you that are probably watching me. Alright, now we're getting into the huge changes. Gauntlets were nerfed. Big time. Alright, I think Boomy is gonna have a field day with this one.
Nerf gauntlets! Please, man! Please! Dude, please, man! Please!
Nair has a slightly smaller horizontal hitbox, but that's not even anything compared to the 4 frames less stun. That is huge. That's one of the biggest nerfs I've seen in a good while. It'll make Nair combos way harder and way more likely to have dodge strings, which is huge. Also, it got slightly reduced variable force, -1 damage. Who cares? It got -4 stun. That is crazy. Recovery also got -3 frames of stun, which means that recovery into Nair and recovery into Dare have a larger escape window. And on top of that, it got slightly less variable force, so it'll kill a little later. So we're talking gauntlets, less damage, or at least less consistently high damage. I mean, most of the kit is untouched, it's only 2 moves. But still, Nair combos, you're probably not going to get as much out of it, so your damage output is slightly lowered, and you kill a little bit later with recovery. So we're hitting the gauntlets on the damage, we're hitting the gauntlets on the kill, and we're not hitting gauntlets off stage. So, yeah, they're still probably pretty good. Believe it or not, in the same patch, Scythe also got hit with some nerfs. Well, alright, let me explain. They look like huge nerfs, but on closer look, closer inspection, they're actually not that bad, and in some cases, Scythe actually got buffed. So let's just dive in. Recovery has a smaller hitbox, significantly decreased force, and the angle is now almost fully horizontal. That seems like it's getting hit on 3 categories that are huge, but you never know. The angle that it hits on might open up for more killing opportunities. Let's say you hit a recovery near the end of the kill box. Because it hits more horizontal, it might kill earlier. On top of that, there might be different combo routes, different string routes out of the recovery. Overall, I think it's a small nerf. Still a very strong move, but there's probably situations where it's actually benefited by these changes. The active input reverse dare now has a lot less variable force, which means it'll kill a lot later on its own. However, this also means that following it up and forcing opponents into 50-50s will work for a much longer window, which is actually huge in some situations. I really cannot confidently say this is a direct nerf. If I had to analyze it, I'd probably say it's a side grade more than anything. The same is true, albeit to a lesser extent, with the active input reverse nair. I can just say reverse nair, right? You get it. I don't want to keep saying that, that's too long. Anyway, it got its variable force significantly decreased as well, meaning it'll kill later on its own, but following it up will have a greatly increased window. Unarmed actually also got 2 nerfs. -3 damage on nair and force changes to recovery. Overall, I think unarmed was a little bit too strong, especially for killing. So the force changes to recovery, -6 variable, which at later HPs will mean it kills a lot later. That's actually a pretty huge nerf. +2 fixed, so it's a little bit balanced out, but that actually means that it's harder to follow up at low HPs. Both are pretty great changes in my opinion. Again, I think unarmed was a little bit strong. The thing is, downlight into GC Ensig is still true, and it does kill earlier than downlight recovery did anyway, so unarmed's kill power is by no means erased, it's just reduced a little bit. I think I just dropped a penny. I can probably buy a 1/6 of a mammoth coin with that. Next and last is bow. It got a small tweak to recovery, decreasing the active hitbox for 1 frame and the hitbox size on the later frames. It's a change in the right direction in my opinion. Bow recovery was, and I mean it still is, very, very strong. It's just a small tweak, I don't think it's a huge deal. Bow, probably still one of the best weapons in the game. Probably a very good place in the meta, but while we're talking about meta, let's kick it off to the recap. This is the first time I think I've ever said this in one of these patch notes videos. This is 100% a meta shifting patch, and without a doubt the largest balance patch we've seen in a hot minute. Again, easily the largest balance patch that I've done so far with these videos. Gauntlets getting a large nerf does more to the meta than just bring them down. It brings up the weapons that Gauntlets just destroyed. Now, I'm not saying Gauntlets are dead. I think they're actually still really strong. They've got a great fundamental kit. Sair is still amazing. Downlight is still borked. I don't think I've ever used that word before. Its offstage is still insane, but now they're less oppressive. So, in my opinion, that's good. If you're a Gauntlets player, I apologize. Orb is really fun. Didn't get changed. I'm willing to say that Katars will take their place in the meta. Gauntlets, not Orb. Katars were already on the rise, and the huge buff to Sidelight will only further push their strength. If you can tell, I'm reading off a script. I always sound different when I read off a script. A Suri will, without a doubt, see a lot more play, at least in North America, where Sword is already very popular, and then, of course, it also got buffed. Orb, Cannon, Gun, Spear, those were all unchanged, but that doesn't mean their place in the meta is stagnant. I think they'll shift a bit, actually. Orbs and Gun tend to struggle a little bit against Katars, which will most likely be seen more often, so they might be brought down slightly. Cannon is a little bit on the rise, especially with Sandstorm innovating a lot. Spear, I think, is just overall very solid, very strong. That might actually stay in the same place. Scythe is still one of the strongest weapons in the game. As I mentioned, in some scenarios, these changes actually buff Scythe, although I'll go out on a limb here and say most of them will probably hurt the weapon, but not by that much. If I'm looking big picture, overall, this was an amazing patch. Just amazing patch. The crossovers, they look fantastic. The animations are beautiful, especially Jake and Peavy. I think they are just, yeah, no, they're so great. The balance changes were all pretty much in the right direction. I'd argue maybe except Katar's, but I don't know. I'm still in awe that Adventure Time characters are in the game. It's actually funny, like just not even that long ago, maybe a month, I was asking Remy if he wanted to watch Adventure Time, just out of nowhere. It's funny how those things work out. Just coincidences in their life. Yeah, I don't know if you could tell, I'm a little pumped up. This is really sick. I loved Adventure Time when I was younger, and they fit in great in the game. The artist really, they did a knockout, amazing job with this. It's just so cool. It's so cool that high profile characters are making their way into the game, and whether you like the actual skins or not, I don't think that you can argue that the exposure they give to the game, the exposure they give to the scene is so valuable. It's so great. Really, BMG knocked it out of the park with this one. Ow. That's the patch. That's the video. Thanks for watching. Hope you stay tuned for some more stuff. I've got a lot planned over the summer. I might mess things up. I got big ideas. I don't know if I can execute on them, but hopefully you stay tuned. Hopefully you stick around, because I'm having a lot of fun here, and I hope you're learning stuff. So yeah, there we go. See you next time.